Hello, I'm Janine Turner, founder of Constituting America. Welcome to our annual academic study entitled History Holds the Key to the Future. Or, as Shakespeare liked to say, what is past is prologue. This year's study is entitled The Genius of America, A Journey into Our Republic, a study on Alexis De Tocqueville's Democracy in America. Because the majority is insulated from the criticism, it lives in, quote, a state of perpetual self-adoration, end quote, failing to ever conceive that they may be wrong. Tom Hand. This essay is based on the readings The Majority in the United States is All-Powerful and the Consequences of That, Volume 1, Part 2, Chapter 7, Subchapters 4 through 6 of Democracy in America, pages 243 through 249. This essay is entitled Democracy in America, the All-Powerful Majority by Tom Hand. In de Tocqueville's masterpiece, Democracy in America, de Tocqueville discusses at length what he terms the, quote, omnipotence of the majority, end quote, found in democracies, and how that all-powerful force is one of the greatest threats to liberty and freedom, the twin pillars of a democratic form of government. It seems a contradiction that the greatest blessing of a democracy, the rule of the majority instead of the one or the few, should also hold in it the most likely place wherein lies the seeds for the possible destruction of democracy. But, as de Tocqueville points out, that is very much the case. As de Tocqueville asks, quote, what is a majority in its collective capacity, if not an individual with opinions, and usually with interest, contrary to those of another individual called the minority? Now, if you admit that a man vested with omnipotence can abuse it against his adversaries, why not admit the same concerning a majority? End quote. De Tocqueville goes on to argue that this omnipotence can easily and perhaps naturally lead to abuse. One he terms, quote, the tyranny of the majority, end quote. Because they are the many against the few, the majority assumes a type of moral authority over society, and woe be to him that questions this power. Where can he who confronts the majority turn for help? The executive is elected by the majority, and the legislature is as well. The police are, in de Tocqueville's term, simply, quote, the majority under arms, end quote. This all-powerful influence extends beyond the laws and the customs of a country. It even has a telling effect on the thoughts of its citizens. De Tocqueville argues that once the majority has determined what is, quote, unquote, right, all who oppose that opinion become outcasts of society. In an example, de Tocqueville pictures an official telling someone out of step with the majority that, quote, you are free not to think as I do. Your life, your goods, everything remains to you. But from this day on, you are a stranger to us. When you approach those like you, they shall flee you as being impure. And those who believe in your innocence, even they shall abandon you, for one would flee them in their turn. Go in peace. I leave you your life, but I leave it to you worse than death, end quote. Because the majority is insulated from the criticism, it lives in a state of, quote, perpetual adoration of itself, end quote, failing to ever conceive that they may be wrong. This develops into arrogance within the majority, who begin to see their fellow citizens not as equals with a different outlook, but rather as deplorable beings incapable of redemption. The omnipotence of the majority has a profound effect on our national character by encouraging the, quote, spirit of the court, end quote, that demeaning characteristic in which men crawl before others in positions of power to curry their favor. While that dehumanizing trait is typically the hallmark of the small cadre of nobility within an absolute monarchy, de Tocqueville argues that the courtier spirit is even more prevalent within a democracy, where the many are within reach of the pinnacle of power, therefore making demeaning servility much more commonplace. De De Tocqueville concludes this discussion by stating that the greatest danger for American republics comes from the omnipotence of the majority. He writes, quote, "If ever freedom is lost in America, one will have to blame the omnipotence of the majority," end quote. In layman's terms, de Tocqueville is cautioning that the minority in this country will only take so much before it pushes back, and that pushback will be most unpleasant. This closing warning is ominous, and one that today's, quote, thought police, end quote, in America would be wise to recognize. This essay was written by Tom Hand. Tom Hand is the visionary behind Americana Corner, an organization dedicated to sharing compelling narratives of significant events, influential leaders, and foundational documents that have shaped the United States. Since 2020, Tom has written and produced over 200 articles and videos aiming to rekindle Americans' patriotic spirit and remind them of the nation's remarkable legacy. Beyond his creative work, Tom established the Preserving America Grant and Partners programs, donating millions to support history organizations nationwide. All proceeds from his book, quote, An American Triumph, America's Founding Era Through the Lives of Ben Franklin, George Washington, and John Adams, end quote, support these programs. His unwavering dedication to promoting patriotism and preserving America's heritage makes him an invaluable advocate for the great American story. Thank you, Tom Hand.